Hello, welcome to season 2 of the Daisy Dates podcast, where I chat all things dating, apps, love, breakups, and everything in between. Today, we're actually celebrating everything love and really happy stories. So I'm really excited about this. I'm joined by humanist, wedding celebrant, and wedding and vow renewals expert, Kathryn Wilson. Welcome.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about lots of things about love.
I know, what a gorgeous, gorgeous thing to be talking about, and the fact that you're around it all of the time just must be absolutely lovely. But before we start, I always do a this or that game with people. So just whatever comes to mind. This kind of crosses over with dating, but also weddings as well. So first dance as a couple or getting the whole wedding party involved?
First dance as a couple.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Bouquet toss or no?
Yeah, I like that, as long as it doesn't cause any injuries.
Yeah, no, I want to be catching it. Lingerie wedding night or naked?
Naked.
Oh, I love it. One dress or two?
I think two. I like two. Go
Yeah.
bougie on your wedding day. Why not?
Yeah, and also I think it makes you relax a little bit more into the evening. Surprises on the day from someone, the groom or the bride, or no surprises?
I love surprises. Yes.
Yeah, love that. Dating apps or real life meets?
Dating apps.
Really? Oh my
I'll
goodness.
tell you more about that why.
Yes, we'll
Yeah.
have to. Activity date or get to know each other dinner date?
Activity date, definitely.
And summer dating or winter dating?
Ooh, winter.
Okay.
Less sweaty, upper lip.
Love it. Yeah, no, very true actually. I'm terrible in the summer. I'm a sweaty person. I'm not someone that looks glamorous on holiday. So
Same.
I would say winter is better for me as well. And I feel like there's just less stress on what to wear in winter. Like in the summer, you have to think about tanning and
Exactly.
and your skin looking nice on your legs and shaving.
Do you know what? It's so nice to like walk around, like go and have like a little nice hot chocolate in winter wonderland or somewhere that's really, really cozy and get to know each other, because then the conversation is more important than what you look like, I think.
Yeah, and I've spoken about this on my Instagram actually, low investment dating, where you don't like spend a week buying things and getting ready for the date and texting WhatsApp groups, just go and make it low key, low investment in terms of money, like a coffee date and everything. Because I think the second that you're curling your hair and you're spraying it and you're wearing a gorgeous tight dress, you're putting so much expectation on a stranger, ultimately.
Exactly.
Tell me about dating apps.
Dating apps. So the reason that I think dating apps, basically it's come from the fact that a lot of the couples I've married in the last year and a half, 2 years, have been from dating apps. And it's just showing us that it works, I guess. These people are getting married. Some of them have been together for a year. Some of them have been together for 10 years. And I think it's just the rise and rise of dating apps, because we're all on them. Even if we don't use them, we're still on them if we're single.
They're
And
in the
even if we're
background.
not.
Oh God, don't get into that. Have you found there's one that particularly is more popular?
So I married a couple last week, and they really wanted to celebrate the fact that they had met on Bumble. And they actually wanted me to shout out Bumble and get a round of applause for Bumble during their ceremony, which is really fun, because it's like round of applause for Bumble, because if it didn't exist, it basically none of us would be in this room right now. So yeah, it's, as much as I think a lot of my friends are single and they really struggle with dating apps, they're like, oh, you know, it's really cringe having to write these little things about yourself. I'd much rather if it was just photos. So they go to Tinder as opposed to Hinge, because they don't have to write as much. Whereas I'm like, you know what, as a mindset thing, you want to get to know someone more than just about what they look like, because you know, as you've said on this podcast before, some people, especially men, they tend to have photos that are up to 6 years old, which is like not good, because that's not what you look like. I don't even look like what I looked like a year ago, if I'm honest.
Exactly. I really like fluctuate in ways, and even my face shape changes, like
And
my hair
eyebrows.
colour. Yeah.
My eyebrows from 7 years ago, they were lost. There was no game in my eyebrows back then.
I've just had mine microbladed, literally a week old, and it's life changing. So anything pre now I don't want to show it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I mean. You're constantly changing. Yeah. That's really interesting. Okay, go Bumble. I was expecting you to say that one or Hinge, if I'm totally honest. I think people take it a little bit more seriously.
Bumble is the one where I've not used most. I think I've used Tinder for a little while, but I've not used Bumble, but it's the one where the woman makes the first move.
Yeah,
Correct.
which I really like. I think it makes everyone feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
And I think guys like that right now. Explain what a humanist wedding is, because I know there's quite a lot of confusion about that.
Okay, so you can get married in England, not legally, so you have to go to a registry office before to do the legals. In Northern Ireland, where I'm from, you might be able to tell, it has been legalised. So I can do the whole thing, sign the piece of paper, and they're legally married. But over here, that rule hasn't come in yet, which we are... we're trying to make that happen, but as of yet, it hasn't been legalized. And so a humanist wedding celebrant would be, you'd work with me, and humanism is the belief that no religion. So the belief is that the higher power is within us and within our communities. There's no God or such.
Yeah.
So my ceremonies are completely non-religious. I don't really like to have anything about anything about religion. It's all about the couple, which is a lot more work than you might think, because if you go to a normal wedding that's perhaps a religious wedding, they can talk about pages from the Bible. They can talk about things that relate to God and religious, and they're all their values. But so we work together to ensure that the couple is talked about and there's no religion. If a couple come to me and they say, Kathryn, we love your vibe, we want you to marry us, but our mums or our parents or our relatives are really religious, how would you feel about intertwining that into the ceremony? I might say, do you know what? If your mom wants to come up and say something, she can say something about her religious values or her beliefs. That's fine by me, but I just can't be saying it. I can't start talking about the Bible or things like that. So it's an absolute joy. It goes without saying, Daisy, that it's really one of those things that, like, it's come into my life, and I just feel so liberated and excited to be able to do this and say I do this for a living. Like, it's fantastic. And I work with couples, all types of couples and all types of love stories, whether they're getting married for the first time or it's a vow renewal.
Well, you literally, in a way, have to go on like what would be similar to a first date. You completely have to get to know these two people from scratch, which must be such an experience. Obviously, you are a presenter anyway, an interviewer, so you're natural with that, but you're a massive people's person, so I can imagine how much you love that. But what is that process like? Because you kind of have to get to know someone. That could be like 10 years that they've known each other, 6 years, 2 years. You have to get to know their story.
It's so interesting that you've said dating, because the number of first dates I've been on in the last 2 years has been a massive thing. And a lot of couples will get in touch with me, and they might have found me on Instagram or online, or they might have searched on the Humanist UK map. So I'm on the map where I will marry people, and if they're getting married there, they might find me that way, or they might find me on Instagram or a quick Google search. And that doesn't mean they immediately want to book me. They want to get to know me. So we go on a first date. That can be a 30-minute session on Zoom, or a lot of the time it's in person. And it's really, like, it is so nerve-wracking. I'm not going to lie to you. Because it is like a job interview, of course, for me. But it's more like a first date, because it's more important to see if we connect. And I will say that. I will state that. I will say, let's get together on Zoom. I want to see if we connect. Like, that is the word I use, because they want someone who not only understands their love story and will say it in an authentic way, but someone that can be their friend. They're opening up and being asked questions they've never heard before or never been asked before. You know, I'm asking these couples, so why are you getting married? No one asks people why they're getting married. They think it's rude. They think, so why are you getting married? They think everybody should know. Oh, well, and a lot of people will just pause and look at each other, and I'd be like, come on, why are you getting married? And they'll be like, because she wants to. Oh. Or, oh, well, it's kind of like the done thing, or it's the next step in our creative process. And I'm like, this is not a business meeting. Why do you want to have a legal document to say that you are married to this person legally? And why do you want to spend the rest of your life with this person? Wow. It's a big question. Yes. And people are kind of a little bit like stunted when I ask them that. And sometimes they'll say, do you know what, I'll come back and I'll give you a better idea. A lot of people will be very honest and be like, they're about the only person I can put up with. so far. You know what I mean? Like it's so people
Make
will
a
be
joke
very
of it.
honest. But you know, I'm coming straight in, and when I get to know couples, it's all about them. You know, most of the time I don't really talk about me at all. And we'll see if we vibe. And thankfully, a lot of the first dates I've gone on have ended in them booking me. Thankfully, sometimes they haven't, but that's because they've lined up a couple of celebrants to meet that day, which I'm completely open to. You know, that the other celebrant might have had more ideas for symbolic gestures, things that might be of interest to them as a couple, or they just might have vibed better. And that's what dating is about. So yeah, I love dating my couples. As much as that sounds really, really weird and really 2023, I do enjoy it, but it's very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I can imagine possibly more than a first date, because I think anything that involves, technically it is, you love it, but it is work. Anything that involves work for me, I think is actually more nerve-wracking than like actual like dating for romance. Do you meet couples and you're just like, wow, you two are the perfect match? Or do you meet them and you're like, okay, and then you get to know them and you're like, wow, this is why you're the perfect match?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's different with every couple. There's couples that I've met that perhaps their celebrant has cancelled, or they've decided that they want to have a celebrant-led wedding as opposed to a registrar. And that's okay, but they'll be a bit panicked and a bit rushed. So there's a little bit more of a nervous energy of like, we need to get this over and done with. And I'll sense that. Like, I'll be like, okay, well, I do need to know this, this, and this. And if you can't get this across to me in time, I won't be able to do your wedding. Because it has to be authentic. It has to be purely about them. I can't just write a script and be like, does this kind of sound like you? You know, it doesn't work that way, because everybody is different. And if I just stood up at your wedding and went, do you know what? This is how this couple met each other. And everybody's just looking at each other like, that's not how they met.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody will know. So yeah, it's interesting. I've worked with couples before where I've been like, these two maybe need to take a little step back. I'm glad that it's like up to a year towards their wedding, because people put a lot of pressure on themselves. You know, they're spending a day with their most loved people in their life. It's a big deal. People spend a lot of money, and it's very, very important to them. And sometimes I just say, you know, tell me about a time you've been to a wedding and you didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me about a time, like things that you've been at a wedding before and you've thought, I don't want this. And they're a bit like, can we talk about that? And I'm like, well, this is not being recorded, but I need to get from you what you don't like so we can run away from that. And it's a really creative process that it requires like me to ask the couple quite intimate questions. And I don't know if we've said, you know, why you get married, but it's also, what was the first thing you noticed about each other? Was there ever a time you thought it wasn't going to work? Tell me about the difficulties that you've been through. And sometimes it does feel a little bit like I'm a therapist, which can be a little bit challenging for some people to open up to. And some people do the exact opposite. I don't even ask them those questions, and yet they tell me them because they want to say, this is our backstory. We've been through these hardships, and this is how I've realised that this is the person for me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps listening to that. Genuinely. It must just be so lovely. And do you find that couples actually learn about each other in this process as well?
So much. And I know it's something you've talked about on this podcast before, but love languages, it's a huge thing for me. Do you know yours?
Yes, touch and words of affirmation.
And that's how you receive love or how you give it? How
I like to receive love, but I'm pretty sure I give it that way as well.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting you look at it like that, because mine is words of affirmation fully. And because my love language is words of affirmation, because that's what I want, then I give it to other people tenfold, so they'll give it back to me. So I'm like, I love you. Please love me back. And I know, I think it comes from a lot of things in my life, you know, from being an only child and, you know, being told continuously how great I am. I still want it into adulthood, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I then would say my second one is acts of service. Whereas with my partner, his is fully acts of service, and he doesn't really like words of affirmation. So I have to kind of pull that out of him. And it's not without its difficulties, I'm not going to lie, because I know that that's my love language and that's how I feel loved. And I think that that's sometimes a challenge in relationships. So I ask my couples to go away, figure out what your love language is. And they come back to me and they're like, that's so interesting because I've never known how to love the person I'm about to marry. I've never known how they love me. I did this with my own partner quite recently, and I was like, let's figure out your love language. And he hates anything like that.
Yeah,
hates it. He's so my opposite, and when it comes to everything like that. And I was like, just go away and spend a couple of weeks on it, thinking about when you feel most loved. And he came back to me a couple of weeks later. He's a bit of a deep thinker, my partner, and he came back and he said, "Oh, do you know what? I was thinking about it the other day." And I went into the fridge and I opened it up and I could see that you'd been to Aldi and you'd bought this really cheap biscuit. It's called Wacko, right?
Okay.
And they're like 70p for like 16 of them. Like they're really, really cheap. But he loves them. And it wasn't the fact that I'd gone and got them. It was the fact that I'd gone and got them, took one out of the packet and put it in a certain place in the fridge that as soon as he opened the fridge, he'd see it. So he knows that I was thinking of him. And he was like, that's probably how I feel most loved, because you'd been about your day and you'd gone and you'd specifically put it in that part of the fridge so that I would see it and I would feel loved. And I was like, that is so true. I do that without even thinking that. And everybody I've told that to, they're like, you should start putting biscuits in the fridge for me. But it's like, it's words, it's acts of service, that, I guess, isn't it?
I think that's so sweet. And I think it's always really nice to hear when a partner, I think particularly guys, when they will listen to their partner and go away and do little activities like that. Because people don't realise how important it is. And actually it was on another podcast, I think Stephen Bartlett's podcast, and it was the guy, I've forgotten his name now, the dating expert that does a lot of the dating shows, Celebs Go Dating. He's like a therapist as well. And he's really open about the fact that him and his wife had a really tough time where he was on the sofa and he was like, this is it. Then he read a book about love languages, finally understood why she wasn't appreciating all of the things he did, like the washing up and putting the clothes away. She needed just words. And as soon as they realised that, their relationship got back on track, and now they're still very happily married, like travelling the world together. And it's quite simple if we just knew this and if people were open to stuff like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people initially hear it and they think, oh, that's so woo-woo, love languages. What does that even mean?
I think they think it's like not science. They think it's like kind of like a star sign or
something
sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
People immediately hear it and think, oh, we just speak English. And I'm like, communication is so much more than just speaking to each other. Communication is physical touch, is how we make people feel about themselves. It's there's so many levels of it, but there's 5 love languages. If we get to know those and learn which ones we align with the most, then that's important. My partner could be giving me gifts every week, and I might stop appreciating it because he's doing it so often and it's lovely. Don't get me wrong, like he does. He actually gets me a flower subscription, which is really lovely, and every time I get them I feel lovely. But I would much prefer you look really lovely today. I can see you've got your eyebrows done.
Yeah.
Top 10, guys. Take notes. It's always, or the eyelashes, anything about that. If I'm told, it's so much stronger for me than receiving something, which makes me sound like really ungrateful. But I'm just being honest.
It's just what it is. I'm 100% words. And actually, a breakup that you probably know about a few years ago that I've definitely spoken about on the breakup episode as well in season 1, he wouldn't try and say words. Therefore, the relationship would never have worked because he wouldn't even compromise. And there's compromises needed when it comes to things like this. Mm-hmm. Going back to weddings, we're going to get some wedding advice from you now because you're seeing a lot of them. So what do you think it is that makes a great wedding? Are there like 3 things specifically that you can pick out, whether that's in activities or the people or anything?
I think there's a lot to be said for intimacy. So people there that I always say to couples, have people there that you would have round your house for like a curry on a Friday night. Don't invite those people who you feel like you should, especially if you wouldn't have them round your house for a curry, because there's something quite intimate in having someone in your house that you're not making dinner for, but you're having round for like a takeaway. You're enjoying that conversation. You really know them. So intimacy. Authentic. It needs to be authentic, and it needs to be all about the couple in my book, because people there should be relearning your love story. They should be hearing things that are authentic to the way you got together. And the last one would be celebration. So it would be, if I'm sure like your friends are people that you have a lot in common with. if they're into drinking, have a shot. Let's all have a shot at the end of the ceremony, or have something that is truly you, and find a way to celebrate you two as a couple that everybody there will align with.
You spend a lot of time with couples, and obviously you've got your own love story of your own. When you are around so much love, what do you think are three, it might be different with every couple, which it probably is, but three prominent things that stand out all the time that really do make like a strong relationship? Like obviously all the little things like love languages are important too, but like the staples.
Oh, okay.
It's quite tricky, isn't it?
Whenever I've listened to your podcast before, there is, you talk a lot about how you want to have lots of things in common. I actually think the opposite. So I think that you should be quite different to your partner. Me and my partner are opposites in a lot of things. He has a lot of hobbies. I don't. I'm not gonna lie.
Guys tend to have loads more, don't they?
Exactly. He can get very obsessive with whether it's golf or running or cycling. It's something every week. Whereas I just don't have that. Whereas I kind of feel like I mellow that out for him a little bit. So the first thing would be being different, having different hobbies and interests, because that keeps the conversation going. You know, what are you doing today? Oh, well, I'm just reading. You know, I'm just reading today, and the other person's doing the same thing. There's not as much to talk about, I think. Obviously, it's a great thing to have in common, but I think you're quicker to lose things to talk about if you have too many shared interests. Wanting the same goals, so like alignment in seeing your future together. So I think that has to be a conversation that happens early on in a relationship. Not necessarily about children and things like that, but just, you know, where you see your future. If you see your future as someone that wants to travel the world for the rest of their life, and this other person is a real homebird, it's never going to work. I think you need to have that kind of, not a conversation is like, tell me what you want to do with your life immediately. I need to know. Otherwise, I'm leaving this date right now. I don't think it needs to be that, but I think it needs to be a shared alignment of the similar interests and where you see your future. And a third one, friendship. I think that's key. We're not always going to get on with our friends. We're not always going to get on with our partner. But I think to having friendship first and foremost is key. So if you don't see this person as a friend, leave the date. If you don't feel like you, because at the end of the day, a partner for life is a companion. You know, there could be things happen in your life where that person is no longer able to do the same things they were once able to do with you, and you have to still love them and tolerate them. And I feel like friendship is a core for that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Another guest on another episode, a mindset coach, has brought up that acceptance. And I think you are more likely to accept traits in someone that, obviously, it sounds weird to say if you like them, because you should always like the person that you're dating, but I think there's a difference between just like obviously having that infatuation with someone that's just beautiful in front of you and getting on with them, to actually having that connection with someone that's kind to the waiter, kind to you, kind to other people, and that's what develops a friendship, I think.
It's an interesting thing that I haven't said anything about attraction.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's, I get that a lot. You know, a lot of couples are mad about each other and want to tell me, and they're just so hot. Like they finish each scene and they're just so hot. Have you seen them? Like there's a lot of that. And obviously attraction is very, very important. But I think as I've matured, I found that I find things and traits in people more attractive than actually how they look. Anybody can be pretty, you know, in their own way. But the way people, as you say, treat a waiter, treat their friends and family, treat their parents in particular, that's a very attractive thing. And manners are so attractive, kindness, those types of things. And I think that's why, you know, if you're ever walking down the street and you can see two people and you kind of think, oh my goodness, like how'd she bag him, or vice versa, or anything like that. I think a lot of it, you know, we were looking beyond the surface.
Yeah, and that's longevity at the end of the day, because everyone changes as they get older, but those traits will always be there. I had a friend the other day say to me, a male friend, I think it's about 36, and he was like, Daisy, you know, you need to maybe be trying to go for people that aren't your typical type, that you don't instantly find attractive, which I will say is harder on dating apps.
So hard.
There's been so many people I've come across that aren't my typical type, or wouldn't be the typical head turner for most people. But like on an app, it is materialistic generally, I think. And I said to him, well, why should I like not be attracted to my partner? Look at you, you've got a stunning partner. And he said, look where that's got me. Because they're splitting up and they're having really hard times. And I'm like, actually, that's really interesting. Because when I thought about people that have broken up recently around me, I'm like, yeah, when I've asked, and I did this as a test with someone close to me recently. I said, when they were mourning a breakup, name 10 things that you loved about them. And it was all look. Then I asked my mum to name 10 things that she loved about my stepdad. And they are madly in love. Like if anyone wants to aspire for a love like theirs, it's that one. And it was all like the way he does this and the way he talks to me and the way he does this at night. And I love that we're really, and it was all about them and the personality traits. And I thought, there you go.
Which I think you saying that makes online dating incredibly difficult. It makes any type of dating. Have you ever experienced speed dating?
Yes, I have.
And
yeah.
How did you find it?
It was actually really enjoyable. I'm not sure it's very realistic because you can't.
Okay.
And the questions that you go in with are different. What people want to know straight away are always different. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't do this speed dating because this would be odd. But on an app, generally the first few things I do like to find out is kind of if they're somehow, obviously not literally going in, but if they're close to their family, because that's relationships around them are quite important to me. If they live at home or not, because I like the idea of a man just being independent and his mum not doing the washing.
Yeah.
But just like kind of, and being in a space, and how long they've been broken up with someone as well. They're kind of things that I like to know, because if someone's just broken up with someone, I just stay away. I like people to have their time to heal.
No, I understand. And I think that's the great way of looking at it. But with... I find speed dating a good thing, because I know a lot of people that have got together through speed dating.
Wow, okay,
because they're both at a place in their... Cause going to something like that is incredibly difficult. Like I'm sure you were quite nervous, were you?
Yes, I was very.
Because you're literally going to an interview, a blind interview with these like people, but everybody there is aligned in the fact that they want to meet someone. They're at the stage in their life. They're not mending a broken heart. They're not just looking for a one night thing. They're looking for a potential relationship. And I feel like already you're in the arena with people who are looking for what you're looking for. Whereas I feel like on dating apps, it could be slightly different. So if you're someone listening to this and you've never tried it before, I'd say don't knock it till you've tried it. Go and do one that's not in your local area. I would advise. I know long distance is really difficult. But my relationship I'm in now was long distance, and I actually think you make it work if it's the right person.
I agree with that. When everyone says it doesn't work, it's just because it hasn't been the right person. I truly do think that if I found an amazing person 2.5 hours down the motorway from my house, I would stay with them, because I know how hard it is to find amazing people, and for you both to like each other at the same time, both be ready and both click.
It just doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, no.
It took a long time for me to move.
Yeah.
And it has to be one person makes the decision.
Your view on speed dating is actually really interesting, and you're right. They're choosing to be there and putting themselves out there in a situation that's actually quite uncomfortable for most. So actually, I find that quite admirable as well. Okay.
It takes a lot of confidence, and I've been speed dating before. I went a couple of times actually when I was single. Some of the nights brought loads of my friends who weren't that interested, and then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go to the next time on my own, because people do take it very seriously, and people are very nervous, and it's not fair. to go in there just to have a night out with the girls, just to have a night out with your mates, to see what it's like. It's not fair on everybody else there that's, you know, this is the third time they've done it. They're literally, quite literally walking in there with their heart in their hands to be like, hi, are we right for each other? And I think, you know, instantly sitting with someone like across the table, oh, it's so nerve-wracking. I'm even get like sweating thinking about remembering what it's like. And you might go, you're not my type. That's what you're thinking in your head. So I'm just going to be your internal head now. It's like, you're not my type. I don't even know what he's saying. 3.5 minutes to go. What's he asked me? Oh yes, I do this for a living. Do you know what I mean? So you've already switched off. And it's like, you actually might sit down and be like, okay, let's give this a go. Let's not and think of my ex that I can see. Let's switch off the ex today and let's actually have an enjoyable conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, I could actually be friends with this person, because I think it should always start with friendship.
I think that's amazing advice. Judging by this little bit of conversation that we've had, I am going to try and go to something like that. Yeah, I will, I promise. I'll report back. We'll all know about it on the Instagram. I'm quite intrigued now. There's so many singles events now, even apps that are new, helping do real life meet events as well.
Yeah.
My schedule does free up later in the year, and I'm actually excited that it does mean that I will be able to just try and go to things like that, which I think are better for me.
And you might meet someone who might introduce you to someone. Like you just don't know. It's I think it's like real networking, but it's networking in love as opposed to business. Like, you're not going in there thinking, oh, where am I going to get my next job from? You're going to think, where am I going to meet my next person?
Love it. I don't think I've passed this by you actually, but I've got to ask you, how you also do like divorce ceremonies, don't you?
Yes.
We'll touch on it.
Yeah. No, listen, anything's a celebration. Put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's a recently new thing, I would say, for a lot of people to hear about these divorce ceremonies. But, you know, COVID was a huge thing for couples. A lot of couples realised that they weren't really right for each other. They met when they were very young. They perhaps had a couple of kids, and they actually realised during COVID, because we were spending a lot of time together with this one individual, that maybe they just didn't want the same thing anymore. And why shouldn't that be celebrated? You know, if it's a mutual agreement of, you know, we're not physically attracted to each other, we both want different things, we're still really good friends, so we can part ways in this really liberating way. I have a friend actually whose husband came out as gay during COVID, so they decided to part ways, and he's now in a relationship with another man, and she's now in another relationship with a man. So like, they're both
amazing,
really happy, and they're good friends still. Wouldn't say close friends, but they're like, they both feel like they're in the right place now.
Yeah.
I'm like, why waste your life in this miserable relationship? Care about this person that you're with enough to tell them, this ain't working anymore.
Definitely.
I love you, I adore you, and because of that, I think we should move in separate ways now. So it you know, anything that's a celebration in life, I think should be having a ceremony to celebrate it with all your friends and family.
Not every breakup has to be like looked at, like frowned upon, or absolutely dreadful. I think it's lovely if two mutual people that are mutually breaking up
conscious
can be like,
uncoupling, isn't that what it's called?
That's nice. I like it. And then what do you find is the main reason people get vow renewals?
Do you know what? It's really varied. I think when I initially heard it, I was thinking, oh, they've been through some rocky times, so they have to prove to each other that I'm still in it. But it's not that at all. A lot of people, in particular, I'm marrying a couple in mid-August, and they were telling me that it is because they didn't have as much money as they do now.
Wow.
So they're getting married in this very posh place, and they are traveling from Seattle. So they're coming over to London from Seattle with all their friends and family. I say all their friends and family. There's 36 people. But they are the nearest and dearest people that were at the first wedding. But the first wedding they had was in their backyard. So it wasn't that special thing that they really wanted to do. They've both had careers for the last 22 years. And now they have a load of money that they think, we're going to spend it on us and show each other that our marriage has been amazing and we want to continue to improve on it. We want to splash some cash on it as well. And I think it's like in writing the ceremony for that, it's they're renewing the promises that they made. You know, I see vows like, whenever I ask my couples to like write vows to each other, I just break it down as, what are 3 things that you love the most about your relationship? And then 3 things that you want to promise for your future together. And whenever they take away the word vow, it takes off the pressure, because really vows are promises. And maybe there's been things that you did promise before that you haven't really been working on, or you haven't maintained in the relationship. So there are things like, you know, I promise that I'm going to try to understand you a bit better during an argument, or I promise to try to like cheer you up whenever Man United lose, or things like that. They have to be things that are like, because we're human beings, like we're not always going to be, I vow to love and respect you every single day of life. What does that mean? Like, that literally means nothing. What is it to give someone love every day of their life?
Yeah.
It's so much more than that. It's the, if you've had a rubbish day, I want to talk to you about it. And I promise to be there to just listen, or I promise to be there to give you a back massage if you're really stressed out, or negotiate with the parking attendant if they've just given you a parking fine. Do you know, things like that, where you're really being there for someone as opposed to just loving them, because what does that mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. And do you find that it is a little bit more chilled than the first time round? Probably they might be able to actually enjoy it more.
Oh, totally. I would say that it's just as nerve-wracking because a lot of couples I've worked with, you know, they got married first time in Vegas. I've done a lot of like vow renewals, but they were weddings recently. A lot of people got married legally during COVID, couldn't have anybody there. So now they're having their actual wedding. But it is technically a vow renewal because it's 2 years later or something like that. But I think a lot of the time it means more to them. They've matured together. They've been through a lot of rubbish. They've been through a lot of things that have really challenged them personally, both as individuals and as a couple. And now they're ready to be like, I got my person. I want to show them off.
Lovely. I like the sound of that. And your role generally as a celebrant is to obviously set the tone of the day, really. You're one of the first voices like in the ceremony, and then to kind of help get that party started. Do you feel that pressure, and also how do you kind of start it?
So it starts the process from when I first meet the couple. I want to figure out what they find funny and what they don't find funny. A lot of my couples are very dry. I'm not really that dry, so I kind of have to script it to be like, does this sound like you, or how would this sound funnier? And we work together. Like, I'm very honest about what I'm going to say, and I send them on Google Docs the script. So if they're like, do you know what, actually if you added in this would be funnier, our audience would find this funnier, that really helps me. Because if I'm going to make fun of the fact that your wife to be is into knitting, I need to know all about that. I need to know why they would find that funny, where that's come from, all those things. So whenever I stand up there, maybe some couples like me to curse. Some couples really don't like me to curse. Okay. You kind of figure out where that's going to be. A lot of couples will be honest to be like, please don't say anything about humanism or anything like that, because my family are really religious, and I want, as much as I want to have a humanist celebrant to be all about us, I don't want to highlight the fact that, you know, God's left the room kind of thing. It sounds very deep, but you know what I mean? He's not in that room present at that moment. So yeah, you kind of have to get to know people. And some couples are brilliant at it. Like, really let me come in the door kind of thing and sit down with them and have a cup of tea. Whereas other couples are a bit like, we don't really know, so best leave it out. Which is fine as well. Yeah. But then that makes the work harder, because I'm like, what can we put in there? You know, I want you to tell me about a funny situation that's happened, or tell me about a situation where you nearly didn't get together, or difficulties you've had, and let's make it into a funny story. I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. Yeah.
And then you kind of have to fit into someone's wedding. So themes and stuff, do you have to dress accordingly to, and are people particularly quite strict about that?
It depends on the couple. Most couples don't care. If I'm honest, they're so focused on other things. I'm the least thing they're thinking about. So that means that I have to ask them.
That's interesting though, because I would want the celebrant that's going to be in the background of those really special photos to look great. Like,
Yeah.
And you'll know when you go on Kathryn's socials, that we'll get onto in a second, that you always look amazing at the weddings. And I think that's what you want, isn't it? You want that person to, it's still, they're a part of it. So.
Yeah. And I guess, hiring a celebrant is considered new. So before it would have been a registrar or a priest or a minister. You're not about to start asking them what to wear. Can you imagine like ringing up your priest and saying, you know what, you wore an orange robe last week and I just ain't into it. It's not my colour scheme. They would not be for it.
Yeah.
So I've not really had many of my couples tell me what to wear and what not to wear. I do dress in a certain way. It obviously has to be quite glamorous, but professional. I've had couples that have been like, can you wear this dress to our wedding? Because it looks really nice and it would go with our colour scheme. And I'm fine with that. As long as it's not something I have to go out and buy.
Yeah, of course. And then Love Celebrants as a brand.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about how you're growing it and how important things like social media is as well to like get across. It's so hard. I know as like even a presenter, it's so hard to let people know what you can do unless they're literally there. It's hard to get your personality across in 10-second videos.
Oh, it's awful. And you'll know yourself as being a presenter. Your brand is you. And it's really difficult to even put yourself out there. I'm even going back to dating now. Putting yourself out there anywhere is incredibly difficult, especially in an authentic way, because you want to be like polished and gorgeous and stunning all the time. But we're human beings. We're not always like that. So it's like, where's the line? With Love Celebrants, I want to say that it's a very modernized, obviously it's me, so it's like it's modern weddings, telling love stories, showcasing the love of these two people in whatever way that might be. And I try to be authentic, but it is really, really difficult because especially with couples, sometimes, I'll be like, oh, can I share that? And they'll be like, no, they don't like social media, so they're not into it. They're like, please don't showcase any of our wedding photos. And I'm like, please, they're so stunning. But I've a lot of the couples I align with me are couples who are modern, who are on social media. They've probably found me there, so they're fine. They love when I'm showcasing their stuff. But again, I think it goes back to that feeling of, if they're right for me, like dating, if they're right for me and they're my right couples, they'll want to do what I want to do on social media. But it's been a really interesting growing my social media on it, because it feels a little bit easier to showcase love stories and other people's love than it is to just showcase me looking nice in a nice little dress. Yeah. Which is just not as important to me as it once was for my presenting page.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. This is like a new chapter for you, and you're obviously great at it.
Oh,
and I just think it's amazing that you're surrounded so much love. What a frequency raiser, which we've also spoken about on previous episodes. I also have a finale question, and today it's just if you would share a little bit of what your own love story is.
So I met my partner Jack nearly 8 years ago. Yeah, just over 8 years ago now, at a festival in Amsterdam.
Wow.
Yeah. So we met through a friend who was also going to the festival. So it was kind of like that. And it's really interesting because a lot of the couples I marry, they always have a story of, but we should have never met. And I kind of feel like that way about my partner Jack. It could have been very likely that we never met. Yeah. And, he was just out of a long-term relationship. When we first met, I was in another relationship. So it you know what I mean? It shouldn't have happened, but it did. And he was the first kind of person who ever pursued me. I'd never been pursued. I didn't know that was a thing that people did.
No, I don't think I have. Yeah.
it's just one of those things where as I was like, I was in this other relationship. I wasn't interested in meeting anybody else. And I think if almost that kind of made him more intent on being like, but he's not right for you. I can show you why I am. And I'd never experienced that before. And yeah, we've been together 7 years now. It's not been without its problems, of course. But he's my best friend first and foremost. And I feel like I can talk to him about anything. And I think that's key in any love story.
Amazing. So really, you did start as friends first then, didn't you? If you were in
Totally.
a relationship. You didn't meet him at a festival thinking, oh, I'm going to get this guy's number.
Yeah, and it was that intent that he wanted to continue that friendship that only grew our connection further and made me realise what the other guy didn't have.
This is quite interesting because in season 1 we had Sammy Clinch on, who said friend zone first, always start as friends. So this is becoming like key to people's stories at the minute. Interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You've been an amazing guest, obviously. Where can people follow you, both Kathryn and also Love Celebrants?
So you can follow me on @LoveCelebrants or lovecelebrants.co.uk. I'm going to be bringing on a couple more celebrants onto my brand. That's why it's Celebrants, because basically it's been doing so well that I now have work that I can give out to other couples. And I don't align with everybody. So I think that's a key as well, that some people might be better suited to other celebrants I know. At Kathryn B. Wilson as well. I'd love to hear from you if you have a love story, or even if you want to talk about your love story, because people have love stories with themselves and you should love yourself first and foremost.
Oh, I love that. Would you ever marry someone?
Marry someone to the... Yes.
Yeah,
do you know what? That should just be a celebration of them.
Of self-love, because the moment you get there, your life does change. So I agree with that. Right, thank you so much. And you can follow Daisy Dates Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and you can listen on all streaming platforms. We're finally on Apple, and you can watch on YouTube as well. And we'll see you next time. Hey, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time for another episode of the Daisy Dates Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that jazz, and give Daisy Dates Podcast a follow. And you can follow me as well, Daisy Bell, on Instagram and TikTok.